Alright, well, hello and welcome. My name is Keith Murray. This is my UX audit of the game Dauntless. A little introduction here. This is a case study, and the goal of it was to audit the user experience of Dauntless and identify any areas that could be improved across the lenses of product goals and loops, activities and features, and UI and micro interactions. Timeline was roughly 2 weeks, and that involves doing user experience research via my own play testing, and then also trying to get some feedback from different social media. Here's an image of Dauntless and their characters from the website. This is obviously an artistic representation, but just to give you an idea of the game itself. Who are they making Dauntless for? And it looks like maybe I skipped a slide here. Yep. So, what is Dauntless? Dauntless is a MMO action RPG where you play as a slayer, which is kind of like a monster hunter who goes out to fight these behemoths. Pretty similar to Monster Hunter World in that franchise. The Dauntless trailer shows us a powerful hunting party and decked out in some crazy looking gear. They go out into a strange, distant land, and they take down these powerful beasts out there. So essentially they're kind of selling this idea of action, adventure, becoming just this great monster hunter, and exploring the world. According to their website and their marketing, you will forge your legend as a slayer of Ramsgate, and I think forge your legend is kind of indicative of the type of player that they're looking for here. So the image again there, and so who are they making Dauntless for? And I've identified via their messaging and marketing 3 different core motivation types that I thought fit within the category of Dauntless as a game. So first of all, we have players that are motivated by mastery, and so in this case we're defining those players as enjoying challenges in high difficulty. This player might practice a moveset until it's perfect, and they also like to min-max their equipment and talent specs so they have the best possible chance at taking down these behemoths. There's also social gameplay, and this is a player who enjoys cooperation or competition, and there are definitely features in the game to support that we'll speak on. And then there's also a player who enjoys exploration and discovery, and in this case we're defining these players as ones who enjoy new areas of the map, but they also enjoy experimenting with different builds, different classes. They like to express themselves with different skins in the game and things of that nature. So discovery is kind of loose in terms of its meaning here, or maybe more abstract is what I meant. Other possible motivations could be achievement, could be kind of someone who's looking for fantasy or immersive type experience as well. But these are the 3 that I identified as the core motivation types. So loops and goals. How is Dauntless trying to engage their players? Players who are motivated by that mastery motivation, they are engaged through this combat and crafting loop. You go out and fight some behemoths, you might come back to town, recoup your supplies, craft some new weapons, new armor, and then go back out for more. There's also a leveling and a talent tree system with a prestige system at the end that enacts some stat decay, and this is compelling players to continue to level up, get excited to progress further in the talent tree, and maybe get some of those skills up at the top that are more enticing. Players who are motivated by social aspects. There are trials and gauntlets and challenges. There's leaderboards to support those, and there's also a reward shop that is specific to the competition. So you might do a trial really well, get some tokens, and be able to get a nice skin from that vendor. There's also a guild perk system in play that we'll talk about later as well. Players who are motivated by exploration and discovery. I think the loops and goals there to engage them are the quest system, bounties, challenges. The quest system gets you to explore new areas of the map. Bounties get you to try new weapons, increase your own weapon skill, and challenges gives you kind of different ways to play the game, and they reward you with different skins and things like that. So what's not working in those loops and goals? In the crafting and combat loop, I think part of the issue is that the combat is easy enough where you don't feel like you need to go back to base to increase your power. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the crafting doesn't compel me to come back because the behemoths are getting too strong. So we'll talk about why that is in a moment. Crafting potions also doesn't seem to be very valuable because every time you go back to the base, you automatically get your supply of health potions replenished. And you also get some consumables that can self-res yourself, and we'll speak more on that later on. But those two things to me makes it so that again, I'm not compelled to go back and craft these potions because I don't really need to do that. The talent tree, or the Slayer's Path as they call it in this game, there's a lot of choices in here that don't really have meaning. You unlock crafting, for example, where crafting is supposed to be a core element of the game, so I don't understand why I have to unlock it. And that's just like right at the beginning of the tree. And then there's also, it's very linear in terms of the different skills that you would select. So if I'm, wearing gauntlets, for example, I have kind of just a straight line of options that give me, +5 power, +1% to crit, or something like that. And there's also nowhere to look at all your stats to make informed decisions. So pretty much the only stat that they'll give you is the power and resistance, which is very kind of just like overarching broad power descriptions of your character. So here I'm identifying or showcasing some of the Slayer's Path, and here I have identified that you have to unlock weaponsmithing here, which I think is interesting. Instead of just giving you access to the crafter and maybe having the crafter give you quests to complete different weapons, maybe. So this was kind of an odd choice to me. And then over here to the left, you can also see the linear aspect of the Slayer's Path that I was talking about. So again, this player was gauntlets. So I didn't really have any choice. I just had to go 1, 2, 3 down the line, and it gave me some menial power increases to my character. Here's one up at the top here where I have to unlock advanced tonic crafting, which again, I'm more accustomed to unlocking different vendors or quests via my own character level experience or a quest in the game. And so this was interesting to me, and also that you have to spend your talent tree resources on this, which I don't think is ideal. So some more loops and goals here and what's not working. The trials, gauntlets, and guild perks, again, these are for the player who enjoys more social gameplay or cooperation competition gameplay, and these kind of seem to be for the in-game players, which is I think it staves off that engagement for those cooperative and competitive players, which is a large portion of players and how they're motivated. So I played for a few hours on a new account, and I really didn't see anything about these, and so we'll talk about more about this or these loops and goals and loops here in a minute. They also have the quests and bounties, and this loop serves to progress you through the game, get you to go to new islands, discover new monsters. It doesn't really feel like the quests are getting more difficult. The islands all kind of look the same. There's a similar feel. It's it's a floating island with different chunks floating around, and it seems like it's mainly a situation where like the colors of the map are going to be different, and that's supposed to signify that one place might be a forest and one place might be a desert. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the same map. Quest rewards don't really feel worth it. I get not a ton of rams here, which are the currency, for example, and combat merits. It just doesn't feel like this is a really engaging quest. Slay Pangar 2 times, I would have done that anyways. I think that the quest could be improved in terms of, maybe even just having more story here to get me excited to go kill this Pangar. Maybe it's a little, there's multiple objectives where, first I have to create new armor because Pangar is going to do a lot of frost damage or something like that. Something that introduces more elements of the game. And then 500 rams too. I could probably go onto the island and you get that in about 10 minutes. So there's no real incentive to come back and complete your quest, which is kind of that core component of the loop aspect. So moving on to activities and features, or kind of getting more into the minutia of the game. The combat feels very simple. It feels like I'm just mashing my left and right mouse button. The fights don't punish me enough in the sense that, I have those health potions, I have those resurrect consumables, and even after I use all of my resurrect consumables, I'm able to self-res myself anyways. So it doesn't feel like the behemoth is that terrifying or that scary to me because I can just live endlessly. It feels like the design intent of combat was to put that mastery in dodging the different attacks from the behemoth. But if you take every hit, especially when you're playing with a group, then you still end up defeating the behemoth, and it's not very rewarding to dodge because you have to. It's just more cognitive load, more things that you have to pay attention to when you could just be, mashing your mouse buttons. The behemoths feel very similar to each other. They each have like body slam, charge, a stomp. When they enrage, they might shoot some projectiles at you, and that's pretty much the entire boss fight. As I said, there's no incentive to play a masterful game. When it comes to dodging, it's almost a question of why bother. And then as far as practicing and getting better, there's no way to know really how I did because there's no feedback. There's no damage meter, like a DPS list or anything like that, DPS meter. So I think that's kind of an issue in terms of combat as well. The different weapons don't really feel that different to play with, which I think is kind of a class identity issue. So they all have a left mouse button attack, a right mouse button attack. You can combo those together in one or two ways, and then there's a special ability as well that each character has. So crafting is just kind of lackluster. Between the starting weapon and the best weapon, I said 50-60 here. I think it's closer to about 80 points. So there's not a huge leap in difference of points. And you'll see in the next slide why I say that 50 points doesn't really seem worth it. You can also pretty quickly into the game power up any of the weapons to be as strong as the strongest weapon. So that's a regent that they've put in the game, and it seems like it's kind of tied to that prestige system, and it just allows you to, I guess, start off with a new weapon that's of that max power level, but it kind of just skips the crafting. It doesn't get me excited to craft because I would rather just get to prestiging as quickly as possible in order to get that regent to power up my weapons. So every time you level up your weapon skill as well, you get an increase of 20 power directly to your character. So each level of weapon is maybe 20 power over the next, and I'm getting that every time I level up. So it doesn't feel like I'm getting I'm uncovering this great new weapon whenever I get a new weapon. It's kind of a small upgrade. So going to the crafting the potions, it's not exciting, it's not necessary. Like I said, health potions are automatically replenished. So that takes away a big reason to even go to the health potion crafter. And even if I did go there, the other potions that you have access to, like a shield potion, they don't really seem necessary because of the aforementioned issues in the combat loop, or the combat goal and activity. Crafting costs gold, but so does the talent tree and skills option, which feels weird. So if I have to choose between equipment or unlocking a new map in the game, then I would probably choose to unlock the new map in order to, again, get closer to that prestige and just be able to get the strongest weapon in the game. So I think that dichotomy of crafting and also talents costing the same currency doesn't necessarily work. Here's a screenshot of the crafting store. You can see this is the most powerful weapon up here. It has 100 power, and I already have 200 power because of my 20-point gauntlets, plus I get 180 power just for being level 8. So I have 200 power if I equipped the strongest weapon in the game, which I'm not even close to equipping, or being able to craft rather, then I only get an increase of 80 power, which percentage-wise it's not bad, but again, this is the strongest weapon in the game, and this is the weakest weapon in the game. Yeah, they also miss an opportunity here to showcase crafting requirements for behemoths that I have yet to encounter, and I think this could maybe increase that level of anticipation for the next levels, and also me crafting this item. So there's also the Slayer's Path that I found some issues with. I touched on some of these before, but it's a tool to progress players through the game and have a sense of core progression. So that was the design intent, was to have that core progression for your character, and then you could switch weapon classes more fluidly, and you would still have a stronger than base level character. I think where they faltered here was adding too much into the Slayer's Path, like those crafting unlocks and vendor unlocks. And I think that the skills that they put in there for the weapons, they don't really change the way that you play the game. And I don't really have any indication, as I say down here, I don't really have any indication of how strong these skills are, because they might increase my critical strike chance by 1%, but I don't know if I already have 20% or if I only have 5%. So I don't really feel like the choices I'm making are backed by any kind of strong decision making on my part. It just feels like that's the next required step in the Slayer's Path. Here's an odd unlock in the Slayer's Path where you have to unlock a new map, again, for that currency, and it seems a little bit of an awkward way to unlock a new territory, in my opinion. I'm more familiar with the style where you might be given a quest after you hit a certain level to go to this Thunder Watch and see what kind of monsters are on the island. So another activity that there is in the game are those Gauntlets, Trials, and Guild perks. I didn't get a chance to test these activities in particular because, as I said before, I believe they're for the in-game players. But my main comment here is that they put up a little leaderboard for the trials, which I think is great in terms of engaging those competitive players, but it's in a small area of town, just kind of like off the beaten path, so it's a little hard to actually find this area and to see that leaderboard. I didn't even know that guilds were in the game until I heard about them through a YouTube video. I was doing a little bit of research and trying to find kind of what the player sentiment was, and I uncovered people talking about guilds, so then I was able to find it a couple levels deep in the game menu. But even then, it didn't seem like they were trying to engage me with guilds and what they offer. So it was kind of just an interesting lack of information on guilds. Here are those trial leaderboards here. And I think they did a good job with these. I think they're pretty cool. and I'll talk more about these in a couple slides. So one of the bigger issues as far as activities and features that I've uncovered is the tutorial / learning curve. I feel like the game doesn't do a good job of setting you up for success in terms of understanding combat and how you can become a master of combat. And then also it doesn't tell you what you can expect from Dauntless, and how different players of different motivations can be engaged. Obviously they wouldn't do it in such a or explicit way, but it doesn't really lead you to find what you would enjoy in the game. I think that it could put you in a heightened sense of awareness when it's trying to teach you things, especially about combat. It just kind of puts you towards some training dummies, and then the next step is to go out and hunt with a hunting party, which may be more experienced than you, and so you just kind of feel like you're running around. One key example of how they don't set you up is that they don't really explain the 3 core damage types. And if you want to find more information about this, you have to find a resource outside of the game, or it's 3 or 4 levels deep in the game menu to find more about this information, which seems pretty core to the mastery of combat. Here's a screenshot that I took of the tutorial island. Here I'm identifying the cognitive load of the move list here. It's more than 3 items. It's kind of a lot to take in. There's no explanation of why I would use each move, so I'm kind of just lost as to what each of these moves are for. They have the damage here, like a DPS counter, just for tutorial island, but it doesn't explain what this damage is or what it does. And then one other thing I wanted to point out in this screenshot is the conceptual model of a training dummy is not this. I didn't necessarily identify these as what I was supposed to go hit for this kind of step in the tutorial, so I was kind of walking around this island looking for training dummies because I thought these were wagons, but that's a small thing here on tutorial island. So now on to the user interface and the micro interactions. You can see some of those issues in the deeper levels that we identified manifesting here in the UI. For instance, the quest user interface, when you're out on an expedition, it's off to the side, it's kind of faded. It reinforces to me that idea that the quests don't really feel important. And then combat UI, I think there's a lot of room for improvement here as well. For example, the combat feels longer and more tedious. Because the behemoths only have a health bar that has 4 sections, and the behemoths have relatively large health pools, so you could be wailing on a behemoth for a little while without seeing much progress, or any progress at all, actually. So during combat, there's a lot of cognitive load in remembering where different behemoths are or where different minions are if you're in a more chaotic fight. So this isn't necessarily ideal for the player because you don't have eyes in the back of your head. Behemoths indicators that they're doing one move or another are very similar to each other, and this is between behemoths as well. And I think that the use of sound effects or a slightly grander motion from the behemoth in preparation for one move or another could facilitate the dodge mastery more in giving that cue to a player that a move is coming. Here's a screenshot from combat. This is the health bar I was identifying. We were maybe in this fight for 2 or 3 minutes at this point, or that's what it felt like at least, and we have only taken off a quarter of the health bar. And this comes all at once. It's not a slow burn. So yeah, that's my main issue here with this screenshot. So key takeaways from my entire UX audit is that Dauntless and the game developers, I think their biggest opportunity is to understand better the product that they are offering, because their messaging and their marketing, all their materials indicate that they're offering a game full of adventure, excitement, and team play. Again, kind of catering towards those mastery players, the players who want competition or cooperation, and those players who are looking to explore a new world, try things out. And I feel like they don't necessarily meet the mark on those. They provided an ARPG that didn't really have a clear direction or purpose with the features and activities they provided. So my high-level suggestions are to, first and foremost, improve the tutorial to teach players about the combat system, and this would, again, facilitate that mastery of combat as a Slayer. Rework the Slayer's path to remove many of the unnecessary skills. And unnecessary skills, I'm alluding to the unlocking of maps and vendors. I don't feel like those belong in a Slayer's path. The Slayer's path, to me, again, is that talent tree. It's the Slayer's path to becoming the best Slayer possible. So I don't think that you would typically find, vendor unlocks and those types of decisions in there. Make crafting a requirement for progression. So I think this kind of comes down to making the behemoths a little bit stronger, and making me feel like I need to craft those weapons and that armor to combat those behemoths better. And then the consumables as well, I think, need to be crafted, including the health potions, but especially the resurrect syringes. I think that I would be extremely compelled to come back to town and also to collect the resources while I was out on expedition to craft at least resurrect syringes, if not also the health potions, because again, right now those are just gifted to you whenever you come back to town. I think the trial leaderboards are a great motivation for those competitive players, but I think maybe you could even move that trial leaderboard to at the beginning of town, or put it in a place that stands out more, so that new players are shown the trials and they're excited about doing trials in the future, and then current players who are experiencing those trials already are more motivated to go back and try to do better. I think that leagues or seasons may be better instead of the stat decay from the prestige element. There's, in my research of just social media and trying to find player sentiment, it seems that there's a lot of players who enjoy playing with their friends, but if they get off of the same play schedule, one player might prestige and lose a heap of progress on one particular weapon, and then they don't necessarily feel like they can play with their friends anymore. So perhaps a full reset in terms of leagues or seasons that ARPGs like Diablo and Path of Exile have found success with. Maybe that would be a better path to go towards, instead of prestiging and losing that progress whenever the Slayer wants. It would be more of a quarterly reset, perhaps. And then last easy suggestion, I think, is danger indicators in combat. So this kind of goes back to that cognitive load I was talking about in the combat system. Right now there's no danger indicators, so if a projectile is coming from behind or even from the sky, there's not very good indications within the UI to signal me to dodge or understand that I'm about to be hit if I can't dodge. So in summary, Dauntless is a great foundation, but it doesn't stick to those core pillars. The most fleshed out features appear to be items like skins and other cosmetics, and those are fun, but I don't believe the players who are attracted to Dauntless and their motivation types, I don't think that those players are engaged by the skins and the collectibles to the extent that Dauntless has put a priority on them. In terms of what I'd like to continue for this project, I'd love to continue researching the player base, through maybe some interviews and play tests of other players, excluding myself. If any of the high-level suggestions were to be implemented, of course, further testing would be required to validate those ideas as well. All right, that's my UX audit, and thank you for sticking around.